Thank you very much. Yes, we are really looking forward to seeing these cars out on track, even though the weather is changing a little bit. Ben Edwards and Bruce Jones with you here to celebrate Jim Clark, and as we've been hearing, such a great hero of motorsport. The man who was born in 1936 in Kilmeny in Fife, moved very early in his life to another farm, actually, which he grew up, of course, very much a part of the farm, and that's something we'll be going into a bit more tomorrow on Saturday. Driving a tractor at a young age, about 10 years old, but then going on into a racing career. And what I love, Bruce, is this variation of cars that he not only raced, but won with.
Yeah, I mean, that's the entirety of it. And some of the vehicles that may or may not be at the back of the display go to prove that he started in very, very humble machinery, as most people did in the 1950s. But it's single-seaters, both Formula One and across Atlantic in the Indy 500. It's sports cars, it's touring cars. But 1965, 60 years ago, was his year of years.
It was.
Second Formula One World Championship, Formula 2 Championship, just, odd weekends out. And then, of course, the Indy 500 in the car that's just gone off your screen there. Two of the Lotus 38s, one in red and white, rather helpfully for us, and the one that Dario Franchitti, we heard him describe beforehand. But it was right across the board, and saloon cars too, British champion in 1964. And the diversity and the fact that a lot of meetings, there would be non-championship Formula One events dotted around Europe, and you go and do the sports car support race, the saloon support race, and anything else you could, because you know what? It was start money, it was prize money they needed to put in the pot. And there were times, even in a driver's career as supreme as Jim Clark, and naturally in everything, that he doubted it and thought, I've got to go back to the farm, I've got to go back to the farm. But people around him kept talking him back into driver's seats. They found seats for him, and he just delivered in everything.
He did. I mean, the Lotus Cortina, of course, he was effectively a British touring car champion. I'd say British touring car, it used to be British Saloon Car Championship then, but what we call the British Touring Car Championship nowadays. So he was a winner in that as well as in Formula One. 1965, which we are celebrating the 60 years since his second and final title, and all those other successes that you talked about. By the way, the Autosport magazine has just come out. Paul Fernley's done a lovely piece about all the victories and all the races that he did in that 1965 season. And just going through the number of them, I was just astonished how many entries. He did 3 here at Goodwood in one weekend, but he was doing nearly all weekends throughout the year, and he started on January the 1st of 1965 and won the first Grand Prix of the season. They used to have it on New Year's Day.
Yeah, and they used to basically have a really strong South African season. They'd go down and have a lot of the races, not just at Kyalami in East London, they'd have Killarney, and it was what a nice way to spend a winter, rather than being on your farm on the Scottish borders. As much as I love the borders, to be down in that sunshine and talk about being race fit. That's what they were, so they could race. They used to have, of course, the Tasman series in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, and he won the Tasman at 65 season, didn't he?
Oh yeah, another one for that year.
Yeah.
And different cars, different engines, different countries.
Unbelievable.
You think about what people did in terms of travel then. Very little.
Yeah.
Live.
I know. Absolutely astonishing. What he did, and such a talent, and so sad that we lost him, of course, at Hockenheim in 1968. Karun is out as well, which is fun to see. Karun Chadhock, one of our people here at Goodwood, who works with us on the coverage, but is also a great racer himself, and we often see him delivering.
Well, of course,
look at the rain
is
now.
Phenomenal rain. Of course, Karun is, well, they're all the single-seaters. No protection for the drivers. Karun is driving the Lotus 49. Epoch-making car. It was the first Formula One car to be fitted with Ford Cosworth DFV. It was available to other customers in 1968, and it won on its debut the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. And so for Karun, a chance to drive it. And of course, the other driver in the team was Graham Hill at the time.
Yeah.
And Damon will be running that car Saturday and Sunday here.
And of course, Graham went on to win the championship that year after, so sadly, Jim Clark died. It wasn't in a Formula One race, it was in a Formula 2 race. It was a not particularly significant race. He felt the car wasn't working very well, but it was a tyre problem. Part of what took him out at the Hockenheim circuit, and a day when the tracks was not so safe as they are nowadays.
No, sure. Lined with trees, that long forest route. There goes Karun out the bottom of the screen. But it was just a measure of the man. That was a massive sports car race at Brands Hatch that weekend, and when the news that Jim had been killed, they thought, what hope have the rest of us got? Because he was on another plane.
Absolutely, he was. And with the Lotus Cortina, Bruce, he wasn't only a star, and there are some lovely pictures of him with 3 wheels on the track, on one wheel usually up in the air, because he had such talent with the Lotus Cortinas. But he also did a rally, and actually was doing really well. It didn't quite work out in the end, but he was showing some great talent with that as well in rallying.
Look, I think we have to understand is back. Oh, now look, I'm an optimistic sort of guy. look, we've got blue sky up ahead as long as you're facing towards that corner. So riding on board now in the Lotus 49. Of course, by the following year, suddenly the car looked rather different.
Whoa, look at that. You see, he had a wheel spin.
Yeah, that is keep it up, Karoon. Don't forget to smile, you're having fun. But of course, by the following year, they suddenly sprouted wings and the cars began to look very different. But this is really the last of the line of cigar-shaped tube cars.
That's very true, actually. And just look at the driver's position compared to like a modern Formula One car. So this is a Formula One car of the late 60s. And look how you can see the driver, his shoulders almost above everything else on the car.
Now look at Karoon, no, entirely. And I mean, there was a phrase, all arms and elbows. That was, I think, Innes Ireland's autobiographical book that made everyone laugh. What a story. But you could see what they were doing. You could see if they were struggling. And not to put too fine a point, in the 50s and 60s there were some slightly larger shaped drivers and there was an awful lot of torso. You think Jose Froilan Gonzalez, known as the Pampas Bull for no small reason, apart from the fact he was exactly the same shape. But yes, you could see what they were doing so much more.
When he started out in single seaters in Formula One, well, he came up through the ranks. He did a lot of it here at Goodwood, learning about them. It was in a funny sort of schedule for Formula One. They went to 1.5 litre, but Lotus was suddenly coming on top, putting it rear-engined, and they delivered an incredibly impressive performance. And a lot of people thought, oh, Jim Clark, because he's got the small engine, he seems to be the star. But of course, when you did get the V8 in the back, he was just as incredibly impressive.
Yeah. And they also chopped and changed back then. The Intercontinental Formula didn't go to 1.5 litres. It stayed at 2.5. So they'd started the season in non-championship events. Then they'd come and do the little 1.5 litre Formula races. Cars being peeled off the track.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Karoon. We've got to have these cars all 3 days. But, just to cap the passage of Jim Clark to Lotus, as soon as they saw what they could do in a little demo run at Brands Hatch, they went, hello, we'll have some of that. And Colin Chapman and Jim Clark, it was one of the standout partnerships in motor racing. They seem to be completely on the same wavelength. And Colin Chapman, founder of Lotus and a man with so many design ideas that created and shaped Formula One through the years, he had so much confidence in Jim and vice versa. A lot of other people didn't get on so well with Colin, but as long as it worked for Jim, Colin was happy, because what happened? You got a winner's trophy. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. Their relationship was remarkably good. I think the loss of Jim Clark hit Colin very hard, and he was very different with drivers after that to a certain extent, but that was fully understandable. So you're seeing a real mixture, and some of the single seaters, of course, he raced were some of the juniors when he started to develop, and then going into the Formula One level. We're looking at Dario there, aren't we?
No, that's Marino.
Oh, sorry, that's Marino.
Brother Marino. I saw legging it up to the collection area to get in the cars, which is some distance away. But you're looking at how quickly Lotus changes from their first real single-seater, the Lotus 16, sit up and beg, and then you move to the 18, the 21, and by the time they got to the 25, that was a car that changed the face of Formula One, because it was the first monocoque. And if you understand what a monocoque is, it's much stronger and lighter, and therefore the car could be set up and it just performed so much better. Now Gogomobile.
Yeah, that's fun to
discuss.
see.
Small engines. These were cars produced in Germany when after the war, petrol rationing, etc. So a car, little egg cup pistons going up and down, and this would be a car that this isn't one that he did. This model itself wasn't this very car that Jim competed in Pires, but for auto tests he drove very similar to one to this, and it just goes to show that even the greatest can start in something very humble. That certainly was the case in the 50s and early 60s.
Yeah, there was one, as you say, it was owned by Ian Scott Watson, who of course was his main friend and who supplied various different cars, and Ian bought a Gogomobile T300. It's only a 250cc two-stroke rear engine, and actually, as you say, Jim didn't do a lot with it. He did an auto test run with it, but he didn't kind of compete with it as much as a lot of the other cars that we're seeing out. But it's great fun to see, isn't it?
No, it really is, and it's the essence. But the fact that he could jump very quickly from that into the DKW, a little more powerful, but still below 1,000cc, and then in short order he was getting in the Porsche 356, and then he moved on to big sports cars. The D-Type, the Togero. But at that point, he was also just starting to dabble in single-seaters, getting into Formula Junior, and, the rest is history. But what a diverse array. And for a lot of people, the sight of Jim Clark in one of these Lotus Cortinas, the red one, by the way, with the lights on the front, there's a bit of a clue. That was one he used for a rally recce to do the RAC rally. He did quite a few rallies. But, the fact is they would drive anything that would put some money in their pocket. And of course, once Jim had a Ford contract, they wanted him to do a lot of advertising. You see him looking cheesy, standing in front of a Ford Transit in the advertisements of the day, or the Ford Cortinas. But Yeah, I mean, he was a man of exquisite control and almost couldn't explain. People almost couldn't explain why he was as fast as he was. He just had that natural feel that gives someone just the most amazing head start.
Absolutely, yeah. He could do it in whatever kind of machinery, really. But the Lotus Cortina was so impressive. He used one as a road car a lot as well. Another Lotus sports car, of course, Ilan. This one also important, and he took on so many different types of racing. The 26R, and in 1964 they had the GT racing, Ian Walker racing with the Elan 26R, and it was given the livery known as Goldbug, which is rather fun. Jim Clark took some victories with this at Alton. Other drivers also competed. There's one of the Porsches you mentioned, very early in his career, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, right at the sharp end. But again, Ian Scott Watson kept providing him with cars, and he did a lot of his races, obviously, in the Scottish borders. Chater Hall was the closest circuit, but some circuits, often on old World War II airfields, sounds familiar, Goodwood. But up in North Yorkshire, one called Long Sutton, he'd drive down, and in fact, he even drove one of the cars down there through a blizzard to the circuit, raced, and then went back north of the border again. So, you know, an enormous diversity in those early years. But with Border Reivers, the Scottish racing team, well, from the Scottish borders, you know, they rallied around and found cars for Jim to drive, and he sort of returned the favour.
No, it's lovely. And we did have a quick glimpse of an Alfa Romeo, which you wouldn't expect him to have been racing, but he did compete that. He tested it, actually. He didn't race it, but he tested it, ex-Border Reivers machine. So we're just having a look at the cars as they went out when it was a little drier. And then the rain started to fall.
Didn't it just? The far side of but the Indy cars, a pair of the Lotus 38s already arriving on the lens. It was going to arrive on the track a lot more. But his early Formula One cars, small and neat for the Formula when it went to 1.5 litres. And it was just a chance to watch Karun Chandok driving a Lotus 49, having his morning face wash, and then the full torrent hitting the circuit out there. Luckily, it moved through quite quickly. But the array of cars driven by the Flying Scotsman were just vast, wonderful, but I mean neatly tied up with Lotus, but bookended by so many other manufacturers in the early days.
I tell you what, Karun Chandok has driven probably more variety of Formula One cars over the years than almost anybody else. He really has a wonderful time, and and he looks after these cars extremely well.